Okay, Shalom Aleichem. So we're back in business as of today, Mitzvah Shem. And we are starting the first Shiur on Mitzvah Yeshiva Sukkah. Mitzvah Shem will be ready for that by the time Sukkah gets around. We'll know how to sit in the Sukkah. So the Mishnah, we're just doing part of the Mishnah in Chav Chesam and Beis, which says, Kol Shivas Hayamim, Adam Oses Sukaso Keva, Obesa Aroi. So these 7 days is supposed to be a Mokum Keva that we're supposed to live in, which afterwards the Mishnah goes into the dinim of Yardu Geshamim, which hopefully we'll learn later on in the Sugya. Not the point. And the Gemara goes, the Brisa, in the Gemara, Tan Rabbanan, Kol Shivas Hayamim Adam Oses Sukaso Keva, Obesa Aroi. Ketzad Hayalokelin Noyim Malon Sukkah. Matzoyes Nois. You have nice type, the bedding. Malon Sukkah. Ocha v'shosa v'tayel v'sukkah. Minanimili. What do you know that you do this? Tanarbanan. Teshu kain taduru. It says Sukkos Teshu shivas yamim. We darshan from that kain taduru. Live there the way you live. Sit there the way you live. V'kan amru kol shivas yamim. Osa adam sukkos keva obesa aroi. Ketzad hayolokelim noyim malon sukkah. Matzoyes nois. Manlan the sukkah, ocha v'shosa v'tayel b'sukkah, v'shanim b'sukkah. We got afterwards into the details of limud, which type of limud should be in the sukkah or shouldn't be in the sukkah, or doesn't need to be in the sukkah. So kelim noyim, just a short ma'isa. Somebody once visited Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, that's all, Rebbe, and was very disturbed to see the kind of old, worn down kind of chair he was sitting in. Armchair was like so decrepit and old and worn it, and she just couldn't bear that he was sitting in a chair like that. So he immediately went up. It was a wealthy guy and bought him a beautiful, very, very, very respectable chair to sit in every day. So Shlomo Zalman took one look at it and thought to himself, "There's no way I could sit in a chair like that. That's not for me." So he sat in his regular chair, but he would have this forum next to him piled up on that chair. Except for once a year in the sukkah, he would bring it into the sukkah. That was a key in the mitzvah of Kalim Noyim B'Sukkah, then he would bring it in to sit in it in a sukkah. Anyway, now the Tosfos over here alludes to a problem that on this drasha of Teshu Ketaduru, Tosfos says, Rava Nambi de Mefarish Taima Achmina Gabi Shomer Ginos La'el Lo Poligaha Brisa could appreciate Sham. Tosfos alludes to what he says in Chav Bava Mad Aleph. There we have a machlokas and the din of shomer ginus or pardesim that are pater ben biyom ben belayla. So the Gemara asks a kasha over there, "Beled de sukkah hasam v'leisu." So those that are shomer ginus or pardesim, let them build a sukkah out there and sit out there in the fields where they're being shomer on these things. Right, so where they're being shomer these things, why don't they put a sukkah out there? So again, we're in Chav Vav Amar Aleph before the two dots. So we have two terutzim in the Gemara. Abaya Amar Teshu came to Duru. Says that it's not. First of all, we'll have to see why, but Abaya holds that to sit out there in a sukkah out in the fields, that's not came to Duru. What's chaser? We'll see in a second. Rava Amar Pirza Kara Laganov. Rava says that that's not a siva to pater, but for whatever reason, which I'm also not sure why, the Gemara doesn't say why. Rashi also doesn't really say why. Just the fact that if he sits there, he's going to be, I guess he won't have Yishuv Das or whatever, because he's worried that if he sits inside there, he won't be able to do his job. His job is to be Shomer Gidus Obedezim. He sits in the sukkah, the Ganav will see that he's not watching and will come and steal the peiros. So that's why he's pater. He can't do his job and sit in the sukkah. So my benayu to come into carry the peri. There's enough community between them. If he's just shomer a big basket of peiros that could be sitting in front of the doorway of the sukkah. Could sit in the sukkah and still be shomer the whole thing. If he's a big gina and he can't see it inside the sukkah, a gana will come and steal. But if he's all in clear view, then according to Abaya, that it's Teshu came to do, for whatever reason, it's your pater out there because Teshu to do. And according to Rava, in that case, you will be chayav. That's enough kamina. So Tosfos there also says what he says by us, that Rava that doesn't give the Tam Mishum Teshuvah and Taduru, La Mishum the Leisla the Rava Drasha the Teshuvah and Taduru. The Brisa he the Kaman Pirkin can't be the Rava's kolik on this Tam Teshuvah and Taduru because it's a Brisa. It's not a totally an Amoraim. All the Amoraim have to be muda to this din of Teshuvah and Taduru. You have to sit the regular way that you sit the rest of the year because that's a Brisa. It's a Drasha from a Brisa. So no one's kolik on that. So why does Rava change the pshat and go away from what Abaya says and what's really pshat in Abaya himself? So the Ran over there in Chavav, Ran says that, to explain this machlokes, says that according to Abaya, since the sukkah it goes out in the field, you can't really bring your normal bedding out there. You can't bring pillows and this and that. You're out in the field. It's not a place. You can bring your normal living things into to live somewhat normally. So to sit in that kind of a sukkah that you can't bring your clay mitzvah and everything, that's missing in Seishu Kein Taduru. That's what Abaya says. But so what's the Rava's teretz? So why doesn't Rava agree with that? So the Ran says that according to Rava, since that's the derech of this person, his parnasa is he's a shomer gidus of pardesin, and he lives like that most of the year. So he's living without normal clay mitzvah the whole year. So for that person, Lididei, it is Kein Taduru. It would be Kein Taduru. And therefore he has to come out to a new Tam, a Pirza Kar Legano, that if he sits there, then he can't really do his job because Ganavim will see him in the sukkah and come and steal. So we have to understand more deeply the Nekudas HaMachlokas between Rav and Abai. According to the Ran, so if Abaya holds it that it's missing in Kein Taduru, so then why does Abaya hold the fact that this person doesn't live like that the rest of the year? Why is that a good enough reason? Manashak, what's really the machlokas between Abaya and Rava, according to the Ran? So I think to understand this machlokas, we have to clear Hakira, and the whole din of Teshu Kein Taduru is the Teshu Kein Taduru that it tells the person, it tells every Jew that you have to sit in the sukkah Kein Taduru. Is that a din in the Gavra? Is that a psul? If it's missing in Kein Taduru, it's a psul in the yeshivas Agavra. That's saying that you're not sitting in a way that, let's say, mitzvah patim in a sukkah. We pass on that if it's an ofen shel mitzvah and you sit there anyway, then the Ramah brings down that you're considered a hedyot. It's considered a fool because you're not doing anything. You're just causing yourself tsar, undue tsar for no reason. You're not making any mitzvah if there's tsar. So it's a psul in the yeshivas agavra. Or is Teshu Kein Taduru a psul in the etzem sukkah? That if you have a sukkah that's not roy the yeshiva, or for one way or the other, then that sukkah is puzzle, is a sukkah psula, the gamre. It's a psula in the chetz of the sukkah. Because it's a sukkah that's ein rui ladira of Teshu Kein Taduru. So the emes is that both dinim are really true. We find rayas to both dinim throughout the halachas of the sukkah. Just many examples, just a few examples that, first of all, we see from the din, like we just mentioned, the din mitzvah. Let's say you have a mitzvah because of it became unduly hot that day, or like maybe some places hard to imagine that, but in Dallas, often it's unduly hot. It could be almost unbearable to sit in the sukkah. And or the halacha, if you have yetushim, suddenly you have an infestation of mosquitoes or flies buzzing around. So then it's a big tsar. So you're putter, you can go back inside the house. So those dinim for sure. If there's a bunch of mosquitoes come in, it's for sure not a psul in the chetza, the sukkah. Just it's a momentary thing that you can't sit there. It's a psul in the gavra that you can't. That you're start put them in a sukkah. Mitzad sheni, we find also kama dinim that a sukkah has to be roy for yeshiva mitzad the chetza of the sukkah, and we have rise that it's mamsa psul in the chetza. For example, there's a Mishnah that says that sukkah al gabe sukkah is puzzle. The lower sukkah is puzzle because it has to be sukkah achas and not shtei sukkahs. But that's only true if the upper sukkah is, if you go into the upper sukkah, the floor of that upper sukkah, which would be the schach of the lower sukkah, is roy lekabel karim bekastos, that it's strong enough that it can hold up beds and pillows. You can theoretically lay in it and sleep in it, and you can walk around in it, and you're not gonna cave through. So, and So first of all, you see that sukkah is psula if it's not roy. It's a sukkah psula. If it's not roy to be makabel these things, the normal clay dira. And you see it as mamash psula in the chetz of the sukkah, because in that case where it's not roy, since the upper sukkah is psula, then it doesn't passel the lower sukkah midin shtei sukkahs. Meaning sukkah agabe sukkah. So we see that it's a psul in the upper sukkah, that it's not considered a chefs of a sukkah, and you don't have a problem with sukkah taga sukkah anymore. You might have other problems, but you don't have sukkah taga sukkah. So you see that, and then from there, and even from the etzem din of the size of the sukkah, we'll see more about this in a moment. That let's say another. Well, if you have hutzin yordim and takasara, we have another din in Gemara back in Dapdalad, that if you have hutzin, like if it's only exactly 10 tefachim high, the minimum shear, and you have hutzin yordim and takasara, you have some of the schach, so the leaves of it go within the 10. So then it's possible because it's a dira sruchahi. So it's sort of like a disgusting place to live. You can't live normally when the minimum height has thorny things you could cut yourself with, whatever. You can't live in there normally. So that's again weiter. That's a psul in the chetz of the sukkah. We find also halacha that if it's the minimum share of a sukkah is zayin al gabe zayin, zayin al zayin, and if it's vav al zayin, zayin al zayin, a person needs vav to sit in, but you need one more tefach to have a minimum size of a shulchan to be able to put a little bit of food on and eat. So you need zayin mitzad shulchanai, and as the Chazon Ish writes that if it's missing in that zayin, if it's only vav, that he says since it's possible for achila because you have nowhere to put, the only way you can have a table is to put the table inside the bais, and the Rif says that the pasuk is like in this case like Beit Shammai that if it's shulchanai. If it's shulchanai toka bais, then it's possible shebi gar achal shulchana. We passel that it's considered psul in the achila that you're not able to eat inside the sukkah. So the Chazon Ish writes that if it's possible for achila, it's possible to kol. The kevin in it, he says the kevin in a sukkah ruya lakol lav sukkahi. If it's not roy for everything, not roy for achila lamashal, then it's not a sukkah at all. It's a chasr and ikr shem sukkah. So we see that Chazon Ish is saying clear that it's a psul in the chetz of the sukkah when it's not roy for achila. That the keinta duru that has to also be roy achila passes for everything else. We'll see also there's a base of Levi like this in the Shuvas. We'll get a little bit further on when we see the Ramah. We'll talk about the Ramah. According to this, you can explain the machlokas Abaye Rava that there's Abaye Rava Lagabe going back to the Sugi and Chavav of the Shomer Ginos or Pardesim. If it's possible, according to Abaye, he's pater bitzad to keinta duru, or if it's you need to come out to a new reason like Rava does. So I think you can say it like this, that to explain their machlokas, even though it's pashut that the possibility of bringing karim akostas in the sukkah, mitzad the we had a halacha of sukkah gabi sukkah that if it's not roy to bring karim akostas mitzad the chozek, the strength of the sukkah, we said if it can't hold up mattresses and pillows, then the sukkah is possible chetza. Here we have a situation where it's not roy to bring pillows and karim akostas because of where it is, because of the matzah, because it's out in the field. So even though the first din for sure is the din of the chetza of the sukkah, and we passel the sukkah yona, it's not considered a sukkah at all. But you can clear a hakira if you have a sukkah that's not roy to bring karim akostas mitzad, that it's not befitting to bring it there. You don't bring it out to the field like that. You can't bring the normal kalim there. Is that also a psul in the chetz of the sukkah? Because it was built in a place where you can't bring these karim akostas. Or maybe that's not a part of the chetz of the sukkah. Inside the chetz, you could put a karim akostas. You could hold them. It's just that it's not normal for a gavra to sit there like that. So that would be a psul in the yeshivas agavra. So that these two studim to understand karim akostas, that could be the hesber, the Ran. When the Ran is saying the machlokas Abaye Rava, that according to Abaye, he says it's possible Teshu came to Duru, is he holds it's a psul in the chetz of the sukkah, and therefore he gives this time. It's almost a psul in the chetz of the sukkah. Rava holds that it's only a psul in the yeshivas agavra, and since it's totally in the gavra, since this gavra is a person who normally sits there all year without karma custos, so we look at his yeshiva. So it's out yeshivas agavra. He's sitting the way he sits. He does sit the rest of the year. So there is no psul of Teshu Kain to Duru. And that could be the Pshat and Rava. According to Abaya, we don't look at him. We look at what normally sukkahs need to be roy for normal tashrishim. Since this sukkah is not, it's a psul in the chetza, and we don't care how he usually sits. But according to Rava, it's a psul in the yeshivas gavra, and since this gavra does normally sit this way, so then for him it's not a psul. So that's why Rava had to come out to a new tam that it's only because Pirza Kar Lagana, because he can't do his job and you're going to cause thieves to come. So that's one possibility to explain this machlokas. Is the lack of the ability to bring karma custos in because of the situation, is that a psul in the chesed of the sukkah, or is that only a psul in the yeshivas agavra? Another way to possibly explain it would be maybe kuli alma, just like if it's not roy the karma custos on the sukkah agavi sukkah, it's a psul in the chesed of the sukkah. Here also, if it's built in a place that you can't live normally, then that's also a psul in the sukkah. You can't bring normal things that normal people bring in. However, a third possibility is that Taka Abaya learns that that's why it's possible. It's possible it's Teshu to do, but because we go after what the world does. Like with the Chefsa, we always look at what does the world normally do. The world normally has karma custos and a sukkah, and therefore it's a psul in the Chefsa. That's a baya. You could hold it. Rava possibly could hold something different. He could hold the enachanami. It's a psul if it's not the way it's normally used the rest of the year. You can't have a normal dira there. Then it's taka psul in the Chefsa. However, that chalos paslas in the Chefsa is totally and kol ish the way that person lives the rest of the year. So even though for normal people, there would be a psul in the Chefza to not be able to roy in the karma custos. For this person, so if it has the minimum, the way he lives, then his sukkah is taka kshera for him. So then this Chefza, the sukkah, is good for him to sit in. Then if that would be true, then you have to clear a kakir. Then what would be if other people want to sit in it? Is a kasher for everybody? What's kasher for him? Is a kasher for everybody? Also for other people that do have karma custos, or is it only kasher for him? But we'll see. First of all, I think that these two dinim that we're talking about, it's the Duyak and the Tur, the beginning of Tafresh Lamed Tes, of these dinim Yeshiva. He says, it starts off at the very beginning, Tafresh Lamed Tes, says the Tur, Yeshivaso, the mitzvah Yeshiva Sukkah, that non, mitzvah Sukkah Kol Zayin, Vyasa Kol Zayin, all 7 days, Beso, Aroi, Vesukasa Keva. But Darba, Kaderach, Sha'adam, Darba, Sok Beso. Shemachnis Ba Kelev, Hanoyim, Bakavea Ba Iker, Diraso. V'ochel, V'shose, V'yashan, V'tayal Ba. So the Torah seems to be repeating himself, seems to be redundant. Again, his words are, he starts off saying, Yeshivasa, B'tan, Mitzvah Sukkah, Kol Shiva, V'yasa Kol Shiva, Besa Aroi, Sukasa Keva. Your bais is Aroi, and the Iker bais, Iker Dira is your Sukkah. Then he turns around right away and says, V'kavea ba Iker Dirasa, V'olko V'shosa, V'yashan V'tayal Ba. He just said a second ago, the 2 lines before, that you make your bais Aroi and your Sukkah Iker Dira. And then the very next line he says again, "V'kavea ba Iker Dirasa." So why this repetition? Mamish b'nei obey, almost in the same sentence. But it's clear that the Torah is speaking out these 2 separate dinim in the din Teshu Kein Taduru. The first din he's saying is that Yasa Beso Aroi Sukkasa Keva, but Darba Kaderach Adam Darba Sok Beso Shemachnis Ba Kelev Hanoyim. that you should live in there the way beside the chefza of the sukkah. It should be like your normal bais, like you bring in kalim there. So there he's talking about the etzem chefza of the sukkah. The sukkah should be a zayas sort sukkah, a type of sukkah that is roy ladira kol shiva. That's beside the chefza of the sukkah. And then he goes on to say, but darba kadirasa adam darba sukkah. So now mitzad the dirasa adam, mitzad the dirasa gavra, it should be like you live in your house. I'm sorry. After that, but kaveaba ikar dirasa ocha v'shosa v'yasha mitaba. The second time he repeats it, he's emphasizing the achila, the shtia, the shena, mitayalba. That's they're talking about the dirasa adam. So these are the two din we're talking about of mitzad the teshuvah keduru. Just we're saying over here that there could be a chisara mitzad the diras adam, where the sukkah is still kshera, and sometimes there could be chisara in the dira in a way that it passes the sukkah itself, the chesed of the sukkah. Now I think that this whole kikira really depends on is totally on the chokes of poskim. I didn't know to bring it in. Let me just go grab a Shulchan Aruch. Sorry. Take a look at the Ramah in Tafresh Mem Sif Daled. The Ramah says, it's a long sif near the end. No, I'm sorry, the beginning of the Ramah says, the din of the Shulchan Aruch there is going on the din mitzvah patim min sukkah. He goes through all the dinim of mitzvah pater. So the Ramah says, in also mitchila b'makom shemitzvah b'achila b'shtia or b'shena or she'yeshar laslos echa behem b'sukkah machnos b'siyarim elistim or genovim. So if you made the sukkah to begin with, it's one thing if the Shulchan Aruch is talking about where you built the sukkah in a regular way, and now there's zvuvin or heat or whatever comes along, and so your mitzvah is butter. But the Ramah says if you built the sukkah to begin with in a way that you're mitzvah b'achila or b'shtia, you can't eat or drink there for one reason or the other, or you could eat or drink there, but you can't sleep there. Or you're afraid of genovim that are there. So let's say you could eat there in the day, you're scared to be there at night, or vice versa, for whatever reason. So he says, Enu yotza ba'osa sukkah klal, afil bedvarim shalom etztar behem. D'lave ke'en dira sheyuchal lasos sham kol tzrachav. So they're most based on a Mordechai, the second parak of Sukkah, that Mordechai is saying that if it's not roy for one of these three ikar things, which is achila, shtia, and shena, it's not roy for any of those three, then it's possible for everything. Because it's a sukkah that's ein ruya ladira kol shiva. There's a discussion in the Achronim about, since it's one of the list of things you have to do in the sukkah is latayal b'sukkah, which means that you take little walks there, or you sit and you talk to your friends. So that one is not, if it's not roy latil, then it's not possible for everything else. It'd be a little bit hard to take a walk in a 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim sukkah, unless you're quite small. take a little walk in that sukkah. But that's a chiddush of the Ramah. The Ramah is telling us that if you can't sleep there, it's possible for everything. So we see clearly the Ramah is telling it. Well, okay, before we see anything clear, let's take a look then. The Shari Tshuva on the spot on the Shulchan Aruch brings down the Shem Chacham Tzvi, which is in inside a Dalet, or has one. It's kind of see inside. Chacham Tzvi is cholik on the Ramah. He says, "Kasav the Tmoy ala Mordechai shehevi ba'agah to start with Shena lo yatzei dechavasa afil b'achila da lesa." He says that's not true. The Teishu kein taduru lo koi ella al ofen hayeshiva ve'ez ofen tia. The same Teishu and taduru is not going on the pas of the chetz of the sukkah. It's only going on the yeshiva agavra. On the yeshiva eza elia v'alzeh namar shetia kein dira. That the way you sit should be the way you sit normally in your normal house. Let's say, for argument's sake, you would make two sukkahs. One is for sleeping and one is for eating. The one for eating is too small to sleep, and make another one to sleep. So, says the Chacham Tzvi, that's going to be fine, even though neither one of them is roy for the other. Still, they are fine. Even though the sukkah for eating is not fit for sleeping, you for sure yotzei mitzachila in a sukkah. Also, there's another Ramah that says that in the Trus Hadeshin, if a sukkah is too narrow to be able to spread out normally to be able to sleep, even so you're mechuyev to sleep there, because if you can't sleep there, then you can't eat there either. He says it's not true, and achush machiach. Everyday life shows that a person can't. There's no greater mitzvah that somebody has to lay down in 7 tefachim, and by 7 tefachim, he somehow cram himself in there in a way that he can't move around or shift himself around. So that's the Chacham Tzvi. Now, Chacham Tzvi, if you look inside, he goes and brings other. He wants to bring other rayas as well. He brings a raya from the fact that we paskin. There's a machlokas whether you need a sukkah of zayin tefachim by zayin tefachim, or it has to be dalad amos by dalad amos. So he wants to say that the Manda Amr that holds dalad amos is because you need for the sukkah to be royal l'shena. And zayin tefachim it's enough to be royal l'achila, even if it's not royal l'shena. So we see that the fact that we paskin zayin tefachim, it's the fact that we paskin that, and he takes on the pasha that it's not royal l'shena. We see that royal l'shena is not ma'akiv in the ability to eat in that sukkah. He also brings a raya from the Gemara has a drasha from the pasuk of Ezrach to tell us that Kol Yisrael yotzim b'sukkah achas. So he says that if Kol Yisrael is sitting in sukkah achas, for sure it's not royal l'shena, and for sure also not royal l'shena in Ishto. There's no makom tzenua there. It's called kulam sukkah achas. So al korchach you see another raya that it's that the fact that it's not roy for one is not a psul in the chefza of the sukkah. It's all din in the yeshiva sagavra. So what you can do, you do. What you can't do, you don't do. That's the Chacham Tzvi. Chazon Ish, we mentioned before, already had said that if a sukkah is not roy for shena, for achila, it's not roy for shena either. It's not a sukkah. So we see that the Chazon Ish is taking on like the Ramah, like the Mordechai, and also the Beis HaLevi in a tshuva. He has a kasha on the Chacham Tzvi. He wants to bring a raya to the Mordechai, to the Ramah, from the Rif, that the Rif holds that the reason that a sukkah is not roy, it's for achila is possible. It's only a sukkah of vav and not zayin, because you don't have enough room for a table. Then that sukkah, according to Beis Shammai, is possible also for achila. It's not a sukkah at all. So again, you see that if it's not roy achila, it's not a sukkah. Even for it's not a sukkah for shena either. So basically, we're coming out over here with the tremendous machlokas as a poskin, whether Teshuv came to do is a psul in the chetz of the sukkah, or it's a psul in just the yeshivas agavra. But the Maisa, the Ramah to answer up the kasha that the Chamsi himself is masking. He's saying that you, the Ramah, will have to agree that if you build one sukkah for Achila, one for Shena, for sure that's going to be good. So you can answer that, like we said before in Rava, that we said in Rava that even though you might Teshu Ketadura might be a psul in the chefsa of the sukkah, but still you're going to look at whether this sukkah is possible chefsa or not is totally in this person. If he made it in a way that he usually lives all the rest of the year, if he did, then this chefsa is kshera. If not, then it's psul b'chefsa. So just like the shomer aginos or pardesim, that's the way he sits all year. So his sukkah b'chefsa is kosher for him. So then you can answer also that in this the Bikur Yaakov, which that's one of the Icarus forum on Hilchos Sukkah and Daled Minim. Bikur Yaakov. It's in the back of the Orach Haner. It's written by the Baal Orach Haner, Orach Haner is on the daf, and the back of the daf in Sukkah. Then he has Sefer Bikur Yaakov, which is on the Seder of Shulchan Aruch, all Hilchos Sukkah and Daled Minim, and that's one of the most quoted forum in the Mishnah Berurah and all the poskim. That's mamish one of the Sodi Yasodas of all these halachas. So the Bikur Yaakov wants to answer the Mordechai that Anacharami, if a person makes one sukkah for Achila and one for Shena, makes two separate sukkahs, then for sure is Yotzai. And Tzvi Pesach Frank in Mikrei Kodesh explains to Bikur Yaakov in Siman Tesvav in his Mikrei Kodesh that since it's normal throughout the entire year that a person most people don't sleep in their kitchen and they don't eat in their bedroom. People have a separate room for the bedroom, a separate room for the kitchen. So it's a normal way of dira to not be sleeping and eating in the same place. So if a person makes a sukkah l'shena and another sukkah for achila, then that's a very normal thing. So even though, let's say, a sukkah that's not roy, if you don't have two sukkahs, you only have one, and just like this shomer guinness of pardesim, it would be a psul b'chetza if not for the fact that he lives that way all year. Also, a person that builds two sukkahs all year, it usually is a psul in the chetza, but if you make two separate sukkahs, you're megala das. You're a different kind of person that you're not going to sleep and eat in the same sukkah, and you're going to do it like you do the rest of the year, and with two separate sukkahs, like a bedroom and a kitchen. So, therefore, this nakuda of two separate sukkahs that the Chacham Tzvi tries to bring a raya from there, and it's only a din in the gavra, not in the psul l'chefza. The sukkah is not a raya. For carrot, it is a psul l'chefza, but this gavra that builds a sukkah is megala das, that's the way he lives, and that's the normal way to live for him. Then that chefza is now kosher for him. So, okay, now just to end off with this one last. This point, to finish off the Mishnah Berurah in Tafresh Men, he writes over there that he brings this machlokes, the Chacham Tzvi and the Ramah, and the Sha'ar Tzion, he says, Yesh li zar ma'od b'zeh. You have to be very careful with this halacha, because many achronim, he says, mention the Ramah, they don't go like the Chacham Tzvi, they go like the Ramah. So, and also you see that way from the Chazon Ish we mentioned in the Beis Halevi, they all say that if you don't have two sukkahs, you have one sukkah and it's not roy for achila or for shena, then it's not a problem. We have to, so you should make sure that your sukkah is made to begin with achila roy for both, unless again you have two separate sukkahs. If you don't, and it's not roy for both, according to the Ramah it's puzzle based on the Mordechai, and most achronim go that way, not like the Chacham Tzvi. So it's a very important halacha. Now, just one last nakuda I want to mention is that this drasha that we learned that sukkah has to be kein taduru, that says teishu in the Torah, and we automatically darshan teishu means kein taduru. You could actually learn the exact opposite. The Torah could have written the sukkah's taduru shivas yamin. You should live there 7 days. The fact that it put a lashon yeshiva, not a lashon dira, so l'chora, that should tell me the exact opposite. The Torah is telling you don't need to sit like you normally live. So from where do we really know that that's a shot in the drasha? How does the Torah know? How do Chazal know that that's what it means? So Now, so there's a brisa and Daf Ches Amud Aleph that discusses what's the meaning of the pasuk Ezrach. It says Ezrach Yeshu B'Sukkos. Ezrach means a citizen. A citizen. So the Gemara wants a darshan over there that you need Ezrach to exclude Nashim, to tell you Nashim are Pturos. And so in Abaya and Chav Kesem Abay says that we had a Havamina that, in other words, why do we need a tour of Ezrach to Pater Nashim? Because we might have thought that women are Chaya because it says Teshu came to Duru. The normal way for a man is to live together with his wife in the same room, to sleep in the same room. So I might have had it because of Teshu came to Duru. I might have thought that women are Chayavos. Therefore, Ezrach tells me no. It's only like an Ezrach, only a Ezrach Ranan, which is like a more like a key citizen in those days. A key citizen meant the men, not the women. Rava says that mitzad Teshu came to Duru, that would not have made me think that women are chayavos. So the only reason I would think that women are chayavos would be because of tesvav. There'd be a drasha of tesvav, they'll tesvav, like we learned that you need to eat a kazayas, even if it rains the first night of Sukkot. From tesvav, you have to eat no matter what. Just like the first night of Pesach, you have to eat a kazayas matzah. Also, the first night of Sukkot, you have to eat a kazayas pas in the Sukkah. So Kamash Malon, I would have thought that Noshim are chayavos just like they're chayav and matzah. Kamash Malon, that they're pater. So now the question is, why does Rava move away from the Kipta of Abaya? What was wrong with the Sforah of Keita Duru? So the Ritva says over there, let's look at it inside. The Ritva says that the Rava moved away from the Kipta of Abaya because he thought that Teshu came to Duru was not enough reason to be a Chayav Nashim. Okay, but then he goes on to say, the Ritva, Yesh Lishol, Lama Nichtav Ezrach Klal. Once we know Teshu came to Duru, why do we need the pasuk of Ezrach? What do we need it for? Shemati Mishem Rabbeinu Hagadol Ramban Zal. He heard B'Shem the Ramban. Shabal Loimar. Shalo Yischayav B'Sukkah Elamishu Ka'orach Ezrach Ranan. He's coming to tell you that only an Ezrach Ra'anan, which means a comfortable, like Ha-Ezrach, the Ezrach, a citizen, a person who's living in a comfortable, normal, satisfying way. Prat l'holchid drachim v'shamei peres mitztayer kiyotzebehem. So that tells us that someone who's a holchid drachim, or if they're shomer ginus pardesim, they're not living like the normal people in their houses, but they're out in the field somewhere, or they're holchid drachim, which we have another Gemara, and that holchid drachim are pturim min sukkah. Or mitztayer. Mitztayer is not, he's not living like a normal mensch in his house, but he's living in a mitztayer way. All those things are, we know all that from Ezrach. That has to be an Ezrach Ranan. He has to be like a upstanding citizen living in an upstanding way. Whenever it says throughout the whole Masechta, many times, Teshu, Ketaduru, and we pater many things because of that. It's all learned from, it's really being learned from Ezra, says the Ramban. That's really the shoresh of Chazal know that. Why he says, Da'akra Galilan, this pasuk's Megala, the might exceed Teshu, any yeshiva koldu, el yeshiva keindira. That's Megala that you might, without Ezra, I would have thought that Teshu means Teshu koldu, any yeshiva ba'alma. Because it doesn't say Taduru, it says Teshu. For Karet, from the pasuk, I would have thought all you need is Yeshiva Ba'alma. Kamash V'lan, Ha'ezrach, that has to be not enough of Yeshiva Koldu, you need a Starka Yeshiva, you need a Geshmaka, good feeling Yeshiva, not a cold Yeshiva Koldu. Eli Yeshiva Kein Dira. Ke'ein, V'yeshiv Yaakov Be'eretz L'guri Aviv. That's a very chashuv ritva b'shem the Ramban. And there's a similar ritva back in back in that sugya, Pirza Kor Laganov, we've quoted before the Ran, in the Machos Abaye Rava by the Yoshev Ginus of Pardesim. So there the Ritva raises the same question again. How do you know that you need a yeshiva kein taduru? So he says, two pshatim over there. The second shot is he quotes the Ramban we just saw. That's the inami of the Ritva. But the first shot he quotes, which he doesn't say in the Chavches, interesting. There he says two, and there he only says one. I guess that's the Ikra Achar by him. But he says that my did Arshina B'chol Dukta Teshu came to do that we make the assumption throughout the Sechta. We say that Teshu has to be came to do like you live in your house. Lad me lishna to Teshu nafkalan. It's not from the lashon of Teshu. Adarabba. On the contrary, we had a loksiv taduru, loksiv Teshu. Since it doesn't say taduru like it could have, but it says Teshu. Mashra ifcha. I would think fakeret. I would think the opposite. That you don't need to have a yeshiva came to do. So how do we know that from? So we don't learn it from the lashon of pasuk. Elos anu lamedim ken mi kavanas ha mitzvah she'amra Torah b'sukkos teishu shivas yamin. We have to. Chazal were yored into the kavana of the mitzvah. What Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted out of this mitzvah. Kolaymar kamosh ha'isen yoshim b'teichem. The reason that the Torah would tell you to sit 7 days in a sukkah is he wants. We know Kadosh Baruch Hu wants to sit there like we would sit in our houses. It's like a sort of an underlying Havana of what Kadosh Baruch Hu would want out of us. For sure, he would like this. I think it's a little bit similar to like the Gemara in Yevamos. Well, there's a Gemara in Sukkah that says maybe you should trying to figure out what's considered a kosher lulav. So it brings a possibility. Maybe it wants a certain kind of lulav that has thorns. So it says no. Darchei noam chonas v'sei shalom. The Torah for sure would not have been mechayiv you to rip up your hands with thorns. Or there's a Gemara in Yevamos that brings the same pasuk. By if a Yevama falls to somebody with she has the brother has kids. I mean the Yevama had a child at the time she fell, and then afterwards the child dies. So maybe then she becomes chayav again to be Yevama. She was pater at the time she fell, and now she becomes Yevama. There it also says darchei noam. It can't be that she fell, she's pater, and then suddenly she can get married and everything like that, and then her kid dies, suddenly she becomes chayav, and all kinds of problems start and everything. The Torah couldn't have wanted that. So you'll find this throughout Chazal, this Yisod. So I think Kainzeh is saying over here, the first shot is that the Kavanas Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu told us to sit in a place 7 days, then he for sure would not have wanted us to be sitting b'tzar and sitting in a strange often in a way that we're sitting there, we're like the Chazon Ish once said, there's a question of we'll talk about more later, when you're allowed to leave the sukkah, for what inferences, what things would give you an allowance to leave the sukkah. Do you need to leave tzorach mitzvah, whatever? So the Chazon Ish once said when he was asked about this, the sukkah is not a jail. Shem didn't say go to jail for 7 days. You can never leave unless you mamash have to. It's not a jail. So it's also Kadosh Baruch Hu wouldn't have told us to sit in a jail 7 days in a cell type of thing. That's going to be a very shvacha yeshiva. So the Rith is saying that kavanas mitzvah, the kavanas Torah, the sukkos teishu shiva shalom, and Kadosh Baruch Hu for sure wanted us to be sitting in a nice normal way. And then he goes inami mirichsiv ezrach b'Yisrael the miyater lachi. You need, like he said, I'll explain later on, B'Shem Ramban, that it's Megala to us, Ezra, that has to be a starka yeshiva, like a good, upstanding citizen would sit. But the first shot is just being yored to the Kavanas mitzvah, the Kavanas Torah, that Kadosh Baruch Hu for sure wants us to sit in a way that's going to be Geshmak, and not in a way that's going to be like a steer to Simchos Yom Tov for 7 days. It's going to be a Simchos Yom Tov Dika yeshiva, a Darkei Noam Dika yeshiva, which would be Teshu came to do in a Geshmak way. Okay. Hope that's understandable, and have a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good Shabbos. Thank you.
Shabbos.